Welcome to the Inspiration North podcast, inspiring stories from inspirational people and how they found their passion, their true north. I'm James Eves.
And I'm Michelle Minikin, and this is the Inspiration North podcast.
Today's episode, Understanding the Art of the Possible with Matt Atkinson. We talk about him knowing every button on a Boeing 747 as a boy, what digital transformation actually is and isn't, and his small part in the TV show Tomorrow's World.
Matt is an experienced digital leader and innovator, skilled in strategic business design and digital tech. In his role as a digital transformation specialist, he works with businesses to understand what's holding them back and to identify suitable solutions. He has cross-sector experience and has helped countless startups, SMEs and corporates to innovate and realise their ambitions. Matt has been an engineer, systems specialist, project manager, team manager, process improvement consultant, change manager, sales director and digital strategist. As a result, he has a unique ability to identify opportunities for improvement and exploit digital technologies to deliver extraordinary results.
So thanks for joining us, Matt. How are you this fine grey day in the northeast?
Good morning. Well, the sun's shining here, so I'm solar powered, so it's all good. Got a smile on my face, and it's nice and sunny in Hartlepool. So good.
Oh, hopefully it's on its way up here because Newcastle's dark and cloudy. But never mind. So if we jump into the first question, when you were a little boy, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Had an idea, and I could, as a very young boy, I knew every single button on a Boeing 747. I had some weird and wonderful book that kind of laid them all out and had an index at the bottom of what everything did. And I imagined myself as a pilot and then an astronaut. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wanted to do. It's I think when puberty set in, everything changed. So then I wanted to be in the military and do something different in the military. And I think that was largely driven by family members, grandfathers and things that had served in the war and decorated and got all sorts of awards and things. So I switched to that. And that was through my teens. That was my big focus.
Mm-hmm. So which part of the military?
So I joined when I was 15 and a half, and not a lot of people know this, but when I was 15 and a half, I went down to Lympstone, to the Commando Training Centre, and did my entrance test for the Royal Marines.
Oh, wow. And
then come back and did some exams. That was my initial entry into the military. That was the first thing I was going to do. Mm-hmm. Obviously, work out. So I was too young. I think the next oldest guy, I was 16, the next oldest guy was 23. I was just too young and my body couldn't hack it. And I remember kind of sitting in front of my troop commander, or the troop as we called him, and I couldn't even see. I was that tired. So I took a break from that. I'd saved up lots of money, went to America for 6 weeks just to live it up at 16-year-old by myself. And visited people I knew out there who'd kind of emigrated, and then come back and then decided to join the army. And I did 10 years service in the army. So it was all good. I lived my childhood dream for 10 years.
What part of the army?
So it was the Royal Artillery.
Okay.
Lots of fun things. And it's funny, you join with an idea of how life's going to be. Mm-hmm. So at the time were Frank on a windsurfer and stuff, and it was this big arrow pointing at Frank having the time of his life in the sun. There's an element of that. So I went to a tour with the United Nations. You know, we trained for the Gulf War, and we went over to Canada and did all of that. So you see lots of exotic places and have lots of fun. But then they also did tours of Northern Ireland and other things as well. So there's the highs and lows of the military that you don't expect when you first. I think you're a bit glamoured when you first get into it, and then you have some pretty fast wake-up calls. And I think I went from being a boy to being a grown-up within about 2 years, very quickly. Probably not in the best way, but noticed the big difference, especially when I come home on leave and I was seeing my mates who were still living with mum and dad, and my life had just changed dramatically. you kind of found yourself being in a different space very quickly.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And I imagine there'd be lots of different skills and things that you get from being in the military. I mean, it's a big pathway, isn't it?
It is, and especially from a leadership perspective, there's a lot of trust in the military. You ask somebody to do a job and they get the job done. There's consequences. It's that kind of thing. So everybody has a lot of trust in each other, especially when you're going into an operational tour. You've got people watching your back and you're watching somebody's back. So I found the leadership side to be really, really strong. And I got asked once, I was working with a political party and I was, delivering services to them just a few years ago. And they asked, what do you think of the leader of that party as a leader? I said, look, I've met some pretty impressive leaders in my time. The best ones were in the military, guaranteed. They were just amazing people, and they could motivate you through anything. And I kind of paid reference to this person and this leader and said that they're not a leader. They're in a position of leadership, but they're not a leader in the same sense that I've witnessed it. People you would take a bullet for, essentially, because you had that much respect for them, and they'd do the same. So it's interesting how you see leadership once you've really, really seen it.
Yeah, I almost went down that route myself. My dad was in the army, and I was about to go into Sandhurst, and then I realised, what are you doing? You'll hate it here.
Yeah.
Massive issues with authority and being told what to do. I would have done really well in the army, not.
Yeah. And I had trouble with that. I was a little cretin back in the day, especially growing up in Hartlepool. I was a little rogue, and I got myself into trouble a few times. There's some hilarious stories that I tell down the pub of things that I did that I shouldn't have done. Into lots of trouble.
Excellent. So, what made you leave?
It was a bit of a rash decision. So I had some bad times. I got hurt a couple of times and decided the regiment decided I should take a couple of years out, and the answer to that was going and training recruits for 2 years in an army training centre. So I qualified for that, and I spent a bit of time in Brecon and places like that, just getting trained up, and then went to this army training centre, and for 2 years did that. I was retraining at the time to go back into commando training and go to a commando unit in Plymouth. So 2 years of work into that, and I was a fit lad. I was running every day with a big heavy backpack on and everything else, and spending most of my time in the gym when I wasn't working. So I've done all of that and invested a lot of time and effort into it. And then typically there's the red tape. I just picked up sergeant, which was an achievement for the amount of time that I'd done. And then they kind of knocked the wind out my sails by saying, look, you can go there, but you're going to lose your rank. And I mean, everything, 10 years of rank, I'd have to go back down to 0. I wasn't happy with that. Now, at the same time, when I was training recruits, I had to do a lot of classroom work. So I conned the army. I said, if you want me to train people in a classroom on PCs, and this was 1996, 1996, when they were just started to be seen in classrooms. It was like Novell Network and other things. It was very early days. I said, so if you want me to use these systems, I'm going to have to go and do the training. So they said, well, tell us what courses you want to do and we'll pay for it, and away you go. I got in touch with some companies in central London. I travelled there, did these courses that were quite high profile, soft MCSE and other stuff. And unbeknown to me, I got these marks on the course. Now, in the army, you always get 100%, right? If you get less than 100%, you get a slap. So I've got on these courses and worked my socks off and got close to 100%. It was like 98 point something, which was unheard of. So next thing you know, I've got all these companies giving me job offers. You put them two things together. The army's going, look, we're going to have to bust you and take your rank off you in order for you to continue doing what you want to do. And got this big offer letter from a global IT company based in London. And I just went, you know what, I think I've had enough and I'll see you later. Drove out the gates. 2 weeks later, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was quite an emotional moment. And then remembered going down to London, so driving into London, didn't have a place to live, had to just find a place on the fly, and didn't have a suit to wear because I was always in combats and things. So I remember going out and buying a suit and then turning up for work on the Monday, looking all brand new, wondering what was going on in my life, really. But it all worked out. So,
I know it's difficult leaving the army, isn't it? Because I suppose you're so well looked after, but you don't quite realise it when you're in there.
yeah, you're quite vulnerable. So you when you leave, or as a young boy in the army, you could get paid, and the next day you've spent it all on beer. You've had a great night out down the Naffy, but you've still got a bed to sleep in, and all of your accommodation's already paid for, and you're still going to get your meals at the cookhouse. So there was that level of safety and security that you all had. And being in civvy life, it was that, I think I'd only been in the job about 3 months, and then some people in the same team as me got made redundant, and I'd never really heard of that before. But what does that mean? Well, they're out of a job. What, they've got to look for another job? And that scared the life out of me. I thought, wow, this could happen to me. And it like 6 times. And every time I got promoted, which is a good thing, but it was that all of a sudden you get a letter and it's like, we're going to make your position redundant. It was weird and frightening at the time.
Definitely. Did you enjoy living down in London?
Yeah, I did. I've still got a lot of friends there, and I still travel down. Completely different culture to the northeast, so I worked my way back up slowly. So I started right in the square mile in London in a place called NatWest Markets Bank on Gate. So people would literally pick up PCs and throw them down the corridor at you because they were trading millions of pounds and things. So something went pop. They just wanted it fixed. So I started in IT, doing hardware and software support, and then quickly got into management and service management, looking after contracts. And I slowly worked my way back up. So I went London to Milton Keynes, I went over to Manchester, over that way, and then I went over to Peterborough and then Burton-on-Trent. So I was dotted around the UK on different contracts. And then I headhunted by Sage in Newcastle, which is how I ended up back in the northeast. And I always had this view that, it's funny, everybody in London has this view that there's no jobs in the north. And I used to look, but I could never find one. The big IT companies just weren't up here, so I couldn't see that transition. I never thought of going to a software company. So as soon as I got it, I latched onto it. It was like, this is me back in the north. I can go and see my family. And I'd been away a long time by then. It was like 20 years. So it was good to be back, and it was a novelty, and the quality of life and everything. It was just lush. And I'd never leave now. I just love the place. Love being in the north.
Right, it's such a nice place to live, isn't it?
It is. Culturally, just very different. Back to people saying good morning. Whereas walking across London Bridge every morning, it'd be like, hi, and people just nudging you, thinking,
who's the crazy person?
Yeah. And I was known as the Northern Monkey because I was too friendly. Everybody used to, talk to us like that.
So nice, isn't it?
Yeah. Southern shandy drinking. I shouldn't say that. That's the default response, isn't it, to Northern Monkey?
Yeah. Well, especially something from Hartlepool. It's a bit below the belt, that one.
I know, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, when they found out about that one, I got all of that. Hip chowder, things like that.
It's funny. They don't realise what they're missing in the north.
No, they don't.
Like, shh, don't tell them.
No, we haven't. Keep it under the radar.
Yeah.
So you come back to the northeast, working with Sage. So where do we go? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so a few years with Sage, learned all about software. I decided I wanted to do. So at that point, it was like, right, I want to do this for myself. So I'd won lots of awards in what I did. I did a lot of good work, especially in London. My name was up in lights. That took me to like the Caribbean on a luxury yacht and things for a week. I was doing lots of cool stuff and couldn't even believe it was happening at the time. So I studied a lot for years and years and years, and was very clear then about what I wanted to do, to be a consultant and to help people to adopt technology and to revolutionize the business. So that's been an ambition of mine for about the last 10 years or so. So I started off doing some self-employed contract work first. I then jumped into a small business because I'd never worked for a small business, so I needed to know how that ticked, and I did that for a few years, and there was lots of success there as well, lots of big contracts that we won. The business essentially went from a few hundred K turnover to close to $1 million in that time, and learned lots of things from lots of people in that space, through partnerships and other things, and some people that kind of come into the business that had been in other similar software companies. So once I'd been through all of that, when I left that business, I set up a company called System 88, named after the 88 butterfly, which is something that transforms. I've got one on my wall here that I bought from Peru. Obviously not live, it's in a box. But some guy in Peru ran through the jungle with a net and caught this thing. And because it's livestock, they couldn't post it to me, so I had to go to New York to pick it up, which wasn't the whole purpose of the trip. I obviously went for New Year and stuff, but then picked up this, had it shipped to the hotel in New York and brought it back with me. But I put it on my wall, and that was my ambition. It was, I want to transform companies using technology, and a butterfly transforms. It's very magical. The 88's a good luck number in China as well, and the paint on the side of racing cars and all sorts of stuff. So that's why I picked that brand. So that took me across loads of different countries, doing lots of different work for some quite big global organizations for a couple of years. And then I'd settled on the digital transformation bit, which is what Radical Panda does now. So I'd work things a bit and revolutionized my own company, and then created something new. And there's no looking back now. It's all going really, really well.
So digital transformation, it's often a term that we hear about in the press, but what does it actually mean, and what are some of the things that you get involved with?
So if you look on Wikipedia, it says something like, and don't quote me, right, because I get it right word for word, but it talks about the novel use of technology in enabling a business to transform or operate the business. So it's about plugging in tech in the right ways. But that's, I listen to lots of people talk about digital transformation myself. So I'll go to events, or I'll watch TED Talks and stuff, and hear people talk about digital transformation. And it always seems to be technology orientated. And I hate that. I hate the fact that people just pick up a piece of tech and go, right, let's just plug this into the business, and that's it. So I've had many CIOs and other leaders of businesses get in touch with me and say, right, we've just bought a load of HoloLens headsets. We need you to come in and tell us how to use them. And I took my head off. I'm like, get them on eBay because you're doing it wrong. So it always starts with people. Any program or project or transformational activity should always start with the people. They're the ones, you get lots of brains in the rooms. That's where the ideas come from. So a lot of my job is spent talking to people and understanding process, understanding things like lessons learned, where have they come from, especially when a business has been around for like 30 or 40 years. Ignore all of that. There's history there. So where have they come from, and then really understanding what the art of the possible is, because there's an abundance of technology. There's tons of it, and even whilst we're talking now, people are inventing new things. So you can't lead with that. It's about understanding where the business wants to go, and that's a challenge sometimes. That's a consultative thing. It takes a lot of time and lots of the 5 whys. Why. And only then do you then explore different technologies and go, right, we've got these 10 different things that will help you get there, but how long is each one going to take to implement, and how much benefit will it deliver? And that's when you get to the answer of, okay, we'll invest in that one first because that's the most cost-effective thing to do. Take this forward. So tech's back of the queue, always will be, and it needs to be. But I love what I do. It's fascinating, and obviously work across so many different sectors. It's never a dull day. It's always something new every single day, which is just amazing.
Yeah, it's quite something tricky as well, isn't it, with organizations? Because I mean, wherever we've worked, we've had it as well, where it's like, oh, would migrate into a new system of some sort for project management or CRM or whatever it is, it always seems really complex, really difficult, very expensive. It never goes to time, on time and on budget. It's sort of, Michelle has a story actually.
So we were told at Balfour Beatty, we've implemented a global applicant tracking system. And we were told, Abigail and I were told that this is the first IT project in the history of Balfour Beatty that went to time and budget. Two recruitment people the job to do. We did the people bit first.
Yeah, and the bigger the company, I've seen some real problem cases where you even look back through the history. So often when I go into a business, I'm saying, right, what's the ambition, what's your vision, what you're trying to do, or what's the challenge, what's holding you back is one of the other questions. But interestingly, what I often do is say, show me what you've invested in over the last few years, and how that's gone. And then you see the horror stories like, we invested a fortune in this, but it just didn't work. It wasn't right for us. Because they've picked up a technology, a system, and they've not assessed it properly. They've not talked to the people or involved them enough. It's a very top-down, right, we're rolling out this platform, and then, of course, it doesn't really work, or they don't have the adoption because nobody's been involved in it. So you've not converted the people's thinking and attitudes towards something, so it's never going to work. And so I often look back before we look forward. I say, let's have a look at that, and let's have a look at the return on investment. How much did you get from that investment that you made? And that's a good thing to do, because often when they've made lots of mistakes, it's like, well, let's not make that mistake again. It's a different way to take it forward, and let's try and involve everybody.
Is there a risk sometimes as well that you get maybe someone in a new position, a senior leader or a new CIO who sort of comes in and wants to sort of make a mark and
put Oracle in,
show they're doing something? It's like, I used Oracle or Salesforce in my last company, SAP. Let's do the same here.
Because they used to work with them, and it's like they've got mates there, done it before, and it's the comfort zone. And you see that, you see CIOs being in the seat for 3 years, and then they do the bit, and then and then somebody new comes in, and it's that Buzz Lightyear moment. It's like, check out my impressive wingspan. I got referred to as Buzz Lightyear once when I joined a team, and I had lots of ideas, and I look back on that and cringe sometimes, because again, that's the wrong thing to do, is to take something. Every company's unique. It's a breathing thing that changes every single day depending on environmental factors and their customer base changing and COVID-19 coming along. So you can't generalize and go, well, this worked over there, so we'll do it here. It's the wrong thing to do.
So do you prefer, maybe like both, but I can imagine I'm hypothesizing in a bigger company, the challenge you've got lots more people, legacy systems, more politics and bureaucracy or whatever, versus, let's say, a much smaller business that's growing. So it's a bit less complex. Is that too simplified a description?
Yeah, it's a good observation, and it's that's my audience, right? Is that I've got traditional companies that need to change, and the added complexity of you've got to keep all of this stuff running in the background whilst you do change. You've got to migrate it all from old school to new. So that's very complex, just in managing that and the timeline for that, and it can take years to do that sometimes. Some of the strategic engagements that we're on at the moment will last 10 years to see things through. And by the time we get there, everything will probably have changed again. So we've got to forward think that as well and try and keep in tune with everything as it evolves. Whereas a new startup, you've often got a clean page. It's much, much easier, especially if they've got a very strong, a lot of passion involved in it and a very strong idea of what they want to be. It's a lot more clear cut.
Yeah. And that sort of strategic view of, I know where we are now, but in 5 years, 10 years, we're taking more people on. We might be not just in the same location. We might be working across a number of different time zones. So I like the element of the forward planning, forward thinking, getting the people on board, Because in effect, it's the people that are going to be using the technology. It's not just sort of, can we not just push a button, Matt, and then this all like works and everybody loves it? No, it don't work like that.
IT training is the most fun.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got the right systems, you shouldn't have to train them, and that's something we focus on as well. Is I call it the TomTom approach, because TomTom was one of the first companies to do this, where you could just open the box and use the device. You didn't training. It was just that intuitive. They had the icons on the screen. It was all very intuitive, and that's a good trick. But it's as much about leading people to get them to think about what they're going to stop doing. So what are you going to forget in order to move forward? Because if you're latched onto these legacy processes and ways of thinking, you're not going to be able to adapt and move forward. So often we spend a lot of time in that space. And what you can't do is just kind of put somebody in the box and go, your view doesn't matter because it's a legacy view. You've got to give everybody a voice. That's really, really important. But you've got to do in a co-creation space as a team is to vote on what they think the most effective things are going to be. So you're not excluding an idea, you're just prioritizing other things over them, if that makes sense. Then you haven't lost somebody, you're kind of taking them with you, and they're accepting that the majority have said that's the right thing to do, so that's what we're going to do. And that's so we're very careful in the way that we approach that as well, and take people with us and make sure everybody's involved.
Important. And we can see, we'd imagine as well, I mean, we face this as well, that with sort of 2-3 different entities, it's quite, as entrepreneurs, you can fall into this dilemma of, we can continue doing certain things, certain processes, but it's taking up time. So it's that balance of, we could invest some money in systems that are really going to help, but it's kind of that switch over, isn't it, to say, I know I could do this and I know I could not spend the money, but I know that the time I'm freeing up is going to help me with focusing on business development, finding new partnerships, research and development, new ideas. And do you come across that much with entrepreneurs as well?
Yeah, I guess so. And the magic formula that gets quoted a lot is return on investment. Everybody seems to be focused on that. And you see this approval process with a lot of companies that it's kind of, it's got to go to the FD for final approval and then it's signed off. It's the full team that needs to make a decision, really, and return on investment shouldn't be just a quantifiable, spreadsheet full of numbers that stacks up that says, yeah, we're now in a better position and we've got more profit. That's a short-term motivator for a company, I think. It's much greater than that. If you can really empower people and have a digital enabled workforce and workplace, that's much more powerful than making a few quid on the bottom line. Longevity from that.
It's taking that workload as well that can be automated out of people's heads and give them the chance to think.
Yeah, absolutely. Automation's a key theme. Self-service as well. So not doing something in the company, giving it your customers to do instead. Creating self-service apps and things frees up resource. People get really freaked out about they're automating everything. Robots are going to do our job. And I always used to say, look, all it's doing is anything that's a mundane task that you do repeatedly that doesn't deliver any value for you, just takes up your time. You should be automating and get about it and move on to something more productive, the stuff that the computers can't do because it needs that human interaction and decision making. I mean, automation and artificial intelligence is getting much more advanced now. So that's getting to the point where it can make decisions like a human being does, and it evolves and everything, which is a little bit Terminator-ish and
we didn't learn, did we?
No.
but that's we didn't learn, yeah. But that's why you put controls in. You write lines in that brain to say if it's a decision between making more money and somebody getting harmed, then save life. Don't worry about the cash and
we just literally just watched iRobot, so that that can be changed.
But we are at a point. I read something, and it was only a couple of weeks ago, that we are actually at a point now where the advancement of technology and the speed that it's creating automation and everything has outweighed the speed in which we're creating new jobs. The deficit now, there's actually, there's people out of work. So for the first time, that risk that everybody's really concerned about is a real thing today. But that said, I forget the percentage. So again, I think my guess is 75%, I think it said, of jobs that will exist in 20 years' time, don't even exist today. They're not there at all, 20 years out. So the whole world's changing because of these things. I think a good example was the drones, being a drone pilot. That was a thing.
Yeah.
But they said drones are coming along, so we won't need delivery drivers anymore. Well, actually, yeah, you do. You're just doing it differently.
Yeah, we live right next to Newcastle Airport, so it's like, drone deliveries wouldn't go down well here, I don't think.
Shut down.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by this stuff. It's interesting to see. That are futurologists. One of them worked for the BBC back in the day, and I follow their pages and see what's going on. But it's fascinating to really understand the truth of where we are with technology and what it's doing with jobs. And we all end up in a position where we're in motorised chairs doing no work. We're just talking to stuff. I don't know.
Like Wall-E.
Yeah.
but it's amazing, and what a shift through COVID-19. It's just accelerated it at no end. So we don't really have a choice because people now don't want to go back to manual ways of doing things. They want to do things differently.
Yeah, it's been one of my questions for you was, how has the world changed so quickly in the last 4 or 5 months? Crazy.
Again, no choice. I was talking to clients and saying, can we meet on Teams, or we're not allowed to have that because of our information security policy. And then 2 weeks later, can we catch up on Teams? Because they had no choice. It just forced it, and there it is. It's
which organisations will use which platform. It's bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
you
get it. You get
can't use Zoom.
One will say, "Oh no, we can't use Zoom because that's the security concerns." Okay, well I've got Skype, Zoom,
Google Hangouts still.
Google Hangouts, we can FaceTime, or we just pick up the phone.
Yeah.
We don't have to see each other.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's funny how some IT teams will say, "Oh no, we can't use Zoom," and then others will say, "Yeah, it's fine. Go bananas."
Yeah, sure. And you wonder where these rumours get started and what the truth is of loopholes and other things, and if it's just a tactic by a bigger company, That's
what I was thinking.
I use them all. I think they're all good. They just are what they are, and we need to adapt and we need to use these things, So if it enables collaboration and joins the dots between people's back bedrooms and things, that's a great thing, and let's get on with it and not lose any sleep over it.
I know, yeah, but it's fascinating. I used to love, when I was little, my favourite programme was Tomorrow's World.
Yeah.
So, they need to bring that back.
So if you look through some of the archives around about 1997, that guy in the background with Peter Snow and Philippa Forrester giving them the clipboard.
That's brilliant.
Doing the IT stuff. So that was me. My mother still got the videotape somewhere, I think. But every week I'd be in Teddington Studios where they filmed it. And I'd have the odd part where the camera would pan past me and I'd be setting up a ASDN link for Thrust SSC in the States or something like that. So I'd be sat there tapping away on the keyboard, then occasionally I'd have the odd line, or I'd just have to hand over a clipboard like a pleb,
We need to go through YouTube and find some of these clips.
Me too.
It was a good place to work. There was lots of celebs kicking about, and there were, some of them were quite uptight, but a lot of them were good fun. It was just hilarious.
That's brilliant.
So I'd shout at them in corridors and things. So
you think we'd actually just made this up?
I know, yeah.
Set this up properly. It's like, no, that was completely. We're finding out lots of things about you today, Matt.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Quick fire round. Question number 1 is, what is the most ridiculous thing you've ever bought?
Ooh, It's probably a recent purchase that just put a massive smile on my face. So I was watching, randomly, I was on Netflix. This was only last week. And I was watching an episode of Rick and Morty, which I'd never watched before. I'd kind of heard about it and seen a few quotes and things on YouTube. I thought I need to watch this thing and see what it's all about. And the episode was called Mr. Meeseeks. And Mr. Meeseeks is this, so you get a Meeseek box, and you get this little box, and every time you press the button, Mr. Meeseeks appears, like a genie, blue character. And he goes, hey, I'm Mr. Meeseeks, look at me, right? And the purpose of Mr. Meeseeks is you give him a challenge and you say, right, I need you to fix this. And then as soon as he's fixed it, he just disappears in a puff of smoke and he's gone. And that's his life purpose, is just to fix something and then disappear. And you have loads of these things, right? You just hit the button and they just appear. And I thought, how good is that? So I'm recruiting people at the moment. And I'm looking to fill 3 roles within the company. I'm like, I need Mr. Meeseeks. So, because I need to be able to go, I need this fixing. And then these people do things, but not disappear in a puff of smoke afterwards. But I just thought it was really novel, that idea. So I went onto eBay and bought a Mr. Meeseeks soft toy that I'm just going to put in the office on my desk to remind me that actually we need that. The most important thing was to have that enthusiasm, that attitude to go, right, I'm going to get this done. If you watch the episode, you'll see what I mean. They're just full of it. They're like, yeah, oh, yeah, can do, and they're just going mental. So, and I just love it. I just love that attitude.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
That's a good one.
Yep.
So question number 2, what skill do you wish more people took the time to learn?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. Listening, and especially to questions, really understanding questions. I meet a lot of people that will ask a question. I'll be witness to it. They'll ask a question, and then while somebody's giving an answer, they'll be thinking of the next question. So actively listening and then responding to what you've heard and testing that and validating it to make sure you've got the right answer to the question and you've fulfilled the need of your question is really important, I think.
Good one.
Good question. Good answer, that one. Question number 3. So what is the best way the 1% could spend their money besides just giving it to people?
So yeah, charity is a strange thing, isn't it? When you're investing in charities. And I think often about SMEs, do a lot of work with SMEs and you see lots of support for them. So these agencies and things that are set up to support SMEs, and there's lots of money ploughed into that. So I'm thinking along them lines, how we can use that smarter and I like things like toolkits that enable people to help themselves. Talked earlier about self-service and automation, and that's a really efficient way of working. So rather than giving money to somebody that then got to physically meet with somebody to make something happen, how can we speed that up and invest in things like that? So I love these platforms that are being born today, these ecosystems that allow people to get stuff done really efficiently. I like that, and I think that's something that will continue, and especially for SMEs, they need that. They don't need this will help you get started up, this will help you to scale up. They need I'm thinking of going into business, and I'm going to be in business for 40 years. I need something that's going to help me on every step of the journey, so that when COVID-19 happens, I know what to do. So many different influences. So I think investing in really smart stuff, smart systems is a good move.
Awesome.
Yeah, good.
Did I answer the question right, or did I misunderstand it?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Can incentivize the 1% to put money in that direction, definitely.
Brilliant.
So the final question then that we ask all our guests. So I pull up in the DeLorean and we take you back to your 18-year-old self and you can give him some advice. What would that be?
To not blow all of my money on nights out, I think would be the biggest one. I don't drink now. I spent years just going out and partying and getting drunk and then fighting to sober up and stuff. And I've discovered what a waste that is. And since I packed in drinking, how energized mentally and physically I've been. So I think I think there's a lot of peer pressure with things like that. and if I could have given myself any advice, it would have been, don't succumb to the peer pressure. Just be yourself and do what you want to do. Not just be another Me Too bar.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a good one.
So if somebody's listening thinks, oh, I like the sound of that one, how do they find you on the internet?
So I'm on Facebook, so that's my personal account as Matt Atkinson on Facebook. Radical Panda is on Instagram. It's on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as well. But we have company pages on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. You know, we're doing more on social media. Actually, it shouldn't be hard to find us. Obviously, we've got the website as well, www.radicalpanda.com. So you can check that out as well. And we're going to be putting more content onto that pretty soon. We've got a bit of a campaign going on.
Awesome.
It's great. It's been very informative and been great to chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, likewise, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been nice talking to you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Check out all the show notes at inspirationnorth.com. Join us again for the next episode when we'll be chatting to another inspirational person. If you like this, subscribe and tell your friends. If you didn't like this, subscribe anyway and tell everybody.